pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, I'm sure most of you have probably recited this Pledge of Allegiance many times, but I doubt many of you have thought about its effects and its powers. Now, its goal, as its name entails, is to have the people confirm their patriotism and their loyalty to this country. However, every time it's uttered, it's actually hypocritical and cuts into the virtues that this country is founded upon, specifically the virtue of freedom of religion. Now, the people who initially moved to this country were Christians looking for escape from religious persecution. And the founding fathers who laid the foundation of this country always kept the freedom of religion at the top of their priorities. Now, I personally am an atheist American here, and every day in school I had to stand up, look at the flag, and claim the country I lived in and loved was, quote, under God. Now, this should bother everyone, religious and non-religious, because this is not a religious debate. This is about keeping Congress in check and making sure that they are only using the powers given to them by the Constitution of the United States. The phrase under God should not be said and should be acknowledged as a biased statement because it's unconstitutional, it's out of date, and it's always defended with fallacies. Now, a quick summary of the history of the Pledge of Allegiance. It was written by Francis Bellamy in 1892. And Bellamy was a Christian socialist, and despite his views, he did not add the phrase under God. Under God was not added until 1954 during the Cold War. The Cold War was the tensions between the Soviet Union and the United States. The Soviet Union were communists, which means they were also atheists. And so to distance ourselves from our ideological foes, we added the phrase under God in order to separate ourselves. Now, this should not have been acceptable during the Cold War, and it certainly shouldn't be acceptable now. The Cold War ended in 1991, and still the biased phrase continues today. Now, the First Amendment of the United States is, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. This means that there is no official religion in the United States. However, in our official pledge, there is a direct reference and advertisement to one religion. According to the Pew Research Group, which is an unpartisan research group based out of Washington, D.C., 71% of the American population is Christian. This was in 2014. Now, that means every time our Pledge of Allegiance is uttered, up to nearly 30% of our country's beliefs is ignored and potentially offended. So, I want you to imagine replacing under God with God is a lie. People would freak out, and I don't advocate for this. This is just as terrible because making someone religious denounce their faith is equally as unethical as having someone who doesn't have faith admitting to have faith. Now, this opens our eyes to a potentially larger problem in that 92% of Congress is Christian, while only 71% of the population is Christian. That means the non-Christian population of the United States is underrepresented in Congress, which might explain why the phrase is still there. Now, many people have tried to take this to court to try and remove the phrase, as they feel is against their First Amendment rights. However, they've all been unsuccessful, and that's because of a group of myths or unfounded claims that the judges use to justify the phrase under God. The most common phrase, or the most common justification is that the Pledge of Allegiance is not mandatory. However, with all the social pressures to seem patriotic, or the teacher pressures in the classroom setting to stand up and say the pledge, it is for all intents and purposes compulsory. Secondly, people love to say that it's not a religious reference, it's simply a reference to our Christian heritage and history. While Christianity and U.S. history is intertwined, we are not a Christian country. In the Constitution itself, the words Jesus Christ, Christianity, Bible, Creator, Divine, and God are all not found within. The word religion is only used in exclusionary purposes. Later, in 1796, in the Treaty of Tripoli, it says America was, and I quote, not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. It would be more American and more appropriate to reference our religious freedom than our Christian heritage. Now, the last and maybe the most absurd myth is the tradition myth. It's always, people claim that it's a tradition and you shouldn't change it. However, we know it was added in 1954, which means it's relatively new. Also, tradition should never be an excuse for our actions. Following tradition blindly could lead to things like us still condoning lack of women's suffrage or slavery. We need to always work to try and improve our society regardless of tradition. Now, we need to stop saying this phrase because it's old-fashioned, it's against the virtues of this country, and it's defended by fallacies. The Pledge of Allegiance is culturally significant and powerful. It's not trivial. Additionally, the Founding Fathers would be very upset to see the direct interference of the government and religion. Now, only Congress is able to officially change the Pledge of Allegiance, so all I ask of you is to, the next time you say the pledge, just to personally omit the phrase "under God" and to spread awareness of this biased phrase and its powerful effects. Religious freedom is very important to this country and should be important to all of you. So I'll leave it with a quote from Thomas Paine, who is a famous political activist and author of the book Common Sense during our inception of this country. And he says, "Of all the tyrannies that affect mankind, tyranny in religion is the worst kind." Thank you.